On this episode, I'm going to be talking about language. Hi guys, and welcome to episode 27 of the Your Progress is Our Passion podcast. Really hope you enjoyed last week's show with Sarah C talking all about creativity. Today we're going to be talking about language, particularly the language that we use not only to relate to ourselves or to describe incidents or events, but also the language that we use to relate to other people as well. Language has a huge importance on the way we perceive things, and the way we say things dictates the amount of emotion that you've got in there. If you think of the difference between the words love and adore, hate and despise, there's a lot more weight in the second word than in the first one. And these words that we say carry a meaning with them. It's why reading a book can often evoke such powerful emotions inside of us. If you say, really quick example of this is if you think when you ask people how they are, how are you today? And the main thing, most common thing we get is not bad. Now, not bad itself, it carries with it the idea that you should be bad. Because bad is the normal. Oh, I'm not bad today. It's like it carries an extra meaning with it on top of it. Now, quite often I say, I'm great, thanks, or I'm fantastic, or I'm really good, thank you. And this surprises people. They're like, oh, okay, what's so good about you today? And it's like as if we need a reason to be good, as if something spectacular has to happen in life in order for us to be not just not bad, but good, or great, or amazing. And to emphasize this quite a lot, what I've done is the first time I've ever written anything in advance for a podcast, so you'll have to excuse me on the video if you see me looking down here at a screen. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to write the same story from two different points of language. And I just want you to notice what the impact of the different words is on you as I read them. The first version is trying to use as plain language as I can, and the second version is using more emotive language. So before I start that, I'll just have a little quick sip of water, and I'm going to get stuck in. Mary was in a hurry. Her young daughter had been up all night making noise, so Mary hadn't had much sleep. Her thoughts were clouded, and she had some place to be. She got dressed, hurriedly packed the baby's bag, and began to get everything in the car. Before they got too far from the house, it was clear that the traffic was bad. Her daughter had begun making a loud noise again, and Mary could feel a headache coming on. After 15 minutes of traffic, they had a clear road in front of them. Mary began to speed up, although she was distracted by the noise from her child. Eventually, Mary lost her patience and turned around to instruct the child to be quiet. In that moment, she did not see the light changing at the next junction. As her car crossed the junction, another car crossing just at the junction collided with her. There was a loud noise and then everything went quiet. Mary lost consciousness. When she came to, she was in hospital, being cared for by doctors and nurses. It was dark outside. The doctors told her that she would be fine despite how things had looked when she arrived. She asked about her daughter. It took the doctor a moment to find out, but her daughter was fine. Mary asked to see her and was told she would be able to shortly. She let out a large breath and felt a little better. Okay, version 2. Mary was frantically rushing around. Her beautiful baby daughter Isabel had been up all night screaming the house down. Mary had barely had an ounce of sleep and felt exhausted. She didn't have a clear head. It was like a fog had come over her. Plus, she had an urgent appointment that she could not miss. She threw on some clothes, scrambled together the things for Izzy's bag, and flung everything into the car. They had barely got 5 minutes from the house before traffic became a nightmare. What's more, Izzy was screaming again in the back, and Mary's head felt like it was going to explode. After what seemed like an eternity of traffic, finally there was a clear road in front of them. Mary put her foot down on the accelerator, despite the screaming infant demanding her attention. Mary had reached the end of her tether. She turned around and shouted loudly at Izzy to be quiet. The light at the next junction changed, and Mary did not see it as she was still facing the back of the car. As they crossed the junction, another car violently smashed into the side of them. The noise was a cacophony of screaming, broken glass, and metal on metal before everything fell silent. Mary felt herself drifting away. She came to in a strange place surrounded by strange people. She didn't know where she was, but she could see that it was dark outside. How long had passed? Someone spoke, a doctor, she thought. He said that Mary had nearly died, but they were able to save her. They said that it was a miracle given the state she'd been in when she arrived. Mary suddenly realised that Izzy had been in the car. My daughter, she implored. The doctor hesitated. Mary's heart sunk to the floor. She's fine, he said. Maybe he'd just been temporarily distracted. Mary asked to see her, but was told she would have to wait until they were able to get someone to bring her. Mary let out a huge sigh and began to feel a little better. Okay, so I just want you to think about, when you've listened to those two stories just now, the different emotions that you would have felt, or the different way in which you would have related to the story. I imagine if you're a parent yourself, you can relate to both parts of it. How we can be distracted quite easily by a screaming child, and even though this is like one of the loves of our life that we're dealing with here, it can be, you can temporarily forget that in these moments of tiredness. But the first one is extremely factual. You know, her daughter had been up all night making noise is very, very different sentence to her beautiful baby daughter, Isabel, had been up all night screaming the house down. Like, the idea of making noise, you think, oh, okay, she could just sleep, she was a bit disruptive, but screaming the house down, that paints a very, very different picture. And if you look further on even, you know, it's like just in between where I say car crossed another and another car crossing the junction collided with her, as opposed to, where are we? As they crossed the junction, another car violently smashed into the side of them. Like the same details, the details of it are pretty much true. Like the same story. She's been hit by another car. The idea of it being violently smashed into the side of it kind of has a suggestion of an attack on there, and that has a more emotive tone to it as well. Now, this is a complete work of fiction that I've basically wrote a couple of days ago. It's, you know, and it's just mainly for the purpose of an exercise. But if you think about the ways in which we talk to ourselves or we talk to other people and the way we describe things, if we place those levels of emotion on things, then that an event holds more of a piece of us. Now, we might want to describe something with emotive language, but if you say, for example, you're in a cycle of negativity, and like the word nightmare was in there, like we use that a hell of a lot. Oh, so I'm having a mare of a day. Like maybe that's a northern expression, but I'm having a nightmare, or it's been a bit of a nightmare, or I'm rushed off my feet in work, or all of these things. It's like they lead to making us feel worse. They lead to making us feel more negative. You know, rushed off my feet, it leads to you feeling more tired. You know, I'm being pulled in too many directions. It makes you begin to feel like you're physically being pulled apart. And it's really important to be mindful of this type of language that we're using. And noting that the emotion that actually comes with it, the feelings that come with it. And the best way I could actually describe how to actually implement and change some of this stuff is actually pay attention to the language that you're using in conversations, and particularly in conversations with yourself, and try and change the word. Like, you know, how was your holiday? Oh, it was really good, thanks. Oh, it was amazing, thank you. You know, like, think like how much more you get an enjoyment from the reminiscing on that holiday. And we're in this sort of weird thing, and I do this myself, I know I'm terrible for it, where, you know, you've got this sort of like, we don't want to feel like we're kind of rubbing it in other people's faces when something nice has happened. So we generally play down the things that we're doing, but that doesn't truly allow us to celebrate in the way that things are. And as a result, you know, one of my codes of mindset is that you get good at the things you do often. Society has got good at playing down achievements and playing things down rather than celebrating them, because it does that often. Be the person that goes out there and celebrates in the things that you've done. You know, I did a seminar yesterday and I loved it, and like I phoned my wife on the way home and she was like, how did it go? And I was like, yeah, I knocked out of the park. So it was amazing. Best one I've done so far. I've said this on social media a few times already today. I genuinely feel it was the best one I've done so far. And I want to talk about that. I want to express that, because that makes me feel even better about the thing that I've done. You know, it's so powerful, the language we use. And particularly, that's when we're talking to other people. What about when we're talking to ourselves? The language we use when we talk to ourselves feeds the beliefs that we do. You know, like one of my favourite language hacks is when someone says, how are you getting on at work, or how have you been getting on with your coursework, or oh, I'm just so busy. I'm so busy. I've had such a busy day. Oh, it's like, I'm so busy today. I don't feel like. Now, the word busy, the connotations that come along with that word is that you have a lot of things to get done. And when you have a lot of things to get done, it's a kind of a never-ending list, and you don't appreciate the things that you have got done. You just think you're busy. You rush off your feet. By the end of the day, you're exhausted. Okay. And instead of that, try using the word productive, like, to describe it. I'm on a really productive day. Like, even when I say it now, think about the difference in the tone, the difference in the meaning behind it. Now, busy means you've got a lot of stuff to do. Productive means you got a lot of stuff done. One of them makes you get to the end of the day and feel like you've not done enough. The other one makes you get to the end of the day and be proud of what you've done. Now, I know there's going to be these sort of type A go-getters out there that think that, well, I want to be to the end of the day thinking that I've not got enough done, because that drives me on. Maybe it does, and if that works for you, fantastic. I always say that none of the things I talk about in this are a one-size-fits-all approach. If that genuinely drives you on, amazing, go for it. Keep thinking that way and it'll work for you. But if you get to the end of the day and you say to yourself, oh, I'm so busy, didn't get as many things as I wanted to do done today, and I feel bad about it, and the next day you just feel more tired, you feel less motivated to do your goals. No, this is for you. Try and say, I've had a productive day. I've had a really productive day, and I'm going to have an even more productive day tomorrow. Because what you're doing is you're giving yourself that pat on the back for the things that you've done. You're not chastising yourself. You're giving yourself that positive reinforcement on how you're going to move forward. So the next day you come back at it energized to do more, as opposed to feeling busy and feeling tired and feeling stressed and feeling, one of the words, this is a prime example of, some people love this word, some people hate it. I hate it, the word the grind. Back to the grind, or grinding away, or we just keep on grinding. I hate it. I like, with that word, I use the word sculpt. Because in my mind, someone who grinds something, like grinding on a computer game, is going and doing the low-level stuff over and over again just so that you can go and do the rest of the other things. And I don't like seeing my life as a grind. I don't like seeing the things as what I do as a grind. Now, sculpting, shaping that destiny, a sculptor takes that piece of clay and he's grinding it down in his own way by chiseling it, but every stroke of that is meticulous, it's deliberate, it's not repetitive, it's got that whole other level of meaning to it, and it inspires, for me at least, it inspires that idea of I'm working towards something beautiful. Grinding just doesn't work like that for me. It puts me off. I hate referring to the in fact, I'm using the word hate now. I strongly dislike using the word grinding now. However, I know at least a handful of people that love using that word. They associate with it and it makes them feel good. So be mindful with all of this on what effect this language has on you and whether or not it's useful for you. And think about particularly in the way that you're talking to yourself. If you're saying, oh, I'm so fat, or oh, I'm no good at these things, or one of my big ones when I was depressed in the past was always, why am I always like this? Such a negative question to be asking myself, because it presumes A, that I'm always like this, and B, it's why am I always like this? So I'll look at things, and then the answers I'm going to come up with that are going to be, well, because you're depressed, because you're useless, because you're all this. That's just going to grind, going back to that word, that's going to grind me down, right? Think about, for me in that situation, talking about how else could I feel? What could I do to feel better? How could I do something that will move me away from what I'm feeling now? Because why do I always feel like this? Such a negative, redundant question for me. And one of the big ones that I like to share a lot of the time about with my own personal experience with bipolar, when I was manic, I'd say, my thoughts would be like, oh, I wish this could last forever, but it's not going to. It's going to crash. There's a dark cloud around the corner, and I was always preempting that dark cloud. I was always kind of telling myself that it was coming. Then when I'm depressed, I always feel like this. Now, those two statements can't be true together. If I'm always depressed, then I can never be manic. I can never be hyper. I can never feel those good times in order to worry that. And at the same time, if when I'm manic, I'm expecting the bad to happen, then when I'm depressed, then the good should be expected to happen. I should be like, okay, yeah, I feel depressed, but there's a good around the corner. And it wasn't until about 7 years ago, where I finally started associating with the expression, this too shall pass. And this too shall pass. It's good for it. It's good when you're feeling bad, and it's roughly neutral when you're feeling good. It's like, okay, this too shall pass. Okay, well that means that if the good passes, the bad passes too. And there's a hell of a lot of difference between thinking that you always like something, which if you're depressed and you're under that cloud, you can feel like it's always like that. You can't see the edge of that cloud, you can't see any gaps in that cloud, and you can't see the sky. But believe me, that cloud is passing and that sky is coming back. But saying things like, I always feel like this, is such a negative spiral, because if someone said to you when you are feeling depressed, okay, that's it for the rest of your life, what does that mean, as opposed to, there is a good time, there is a better time, there is a better thing coming? It means something very, very different. So that was a situation in which it was vitally important for me to assess the language I was using. So I'm going to leave it there. Let me have a look at the dates on this. This one should be the 7th of March when this one has come out. Things to plug. I'm going to continue to plug the Europe's Toughest Mudder fundraiser. There's myself and now 5 other guys doing this, and we're doing it to raise money for CALM, Campaign Against Living Miserably. These guys are a hotline for people who suffer with poor mental health, particularly men. Suicide is the #1 killer of men under the age of 45, and not having someone to help you through these languages, through this type of self-talk, having someone to actually be able to do that is a vital component in helping keep these young men alive. That's what CALM are doing, amongst many other things. So if you want to help support us on that, the link is justgiving.com/DaveDoesETM, as in Europe's Toughest Mudder. I would absolutely be over the moon if you could give some money to that. I'm much easier and much happier at plugging charity events than I am at plugging my services. So I suppose I'll throw a service in. If you ever want to work with me one-to-one, or if you ever want to get your story on the podcast, dave@cofitpt.com. I love you all. Your progress is my passion, as always, and I will be back next week, I think, with Jesse, who hosted my seminar at the weekend. I'll see you all soon. Bye.